Morning, everybody, and welcome to our Seeing is Believing. So the topic this morning is mental health, and we would organise these conversations quite regularly just to keep us in touch, keep us connected to whatever the issues are in the community. And I'm absolutely delighted that everybody was able to make it, because we have a real mix of people, which is fantastic. Would it be helpful just to quickly say who you are and what organisation you're from, if you're from an organisation? And then we'll kick off into the discussion. We have about an hour this morning, and as we go through the morning, if there are any questions, maybe just pop them into the chat and I'll pick them up there. But I'm Shifra and I work for the Community Foundation, and beside me I see Orla. Orla, do you want to say who you're?
I'm not Orla, my name's Siobhan, but as I explained, my daughter does her dance classes and I couldn't get it changed.
No problem. Welcome, Siobhan. Where are you from?
I'm a big supporter of mental health, and I'm involved with a local drama group called Castlewellan Studio Players, which Ray will know because we just done an event in his in the shop on Saturday, and that's my main reason for being here.
Brilliant. Well, welcome, Orla. And
Siobhan.
Siobhan, I'll have to change that. Siobhan.
I know. Just call me Orla, it's fine.
Caroline.
Hi, my name's Caroline O'Neill, and I actually never heard of this foundation until last week whenever the team reached out to me. I would need lots of wine and snacks for me to tell my story, but I had a business pre-COVID, closed it down. Dig Children's were in March, so I am now on a new journey just to help businesses use social media to grow their brand and business with my business Dig for Success. So I'm always been keen to help out in any way in the community, especially charity-wise. So whenever the girls reach out to me, I was keen to hear what everyone was up to.
Brilliant. Well, welcome, Caroline. Hope you'll find today useful. And Paul, you're beside Caroline on my screen there.
Hi, how you all doing? Morning, my name is Paul. I'm going to tell you my story on my journey from addiction to mental health and where I am today. So it's nice to be involved in this, and thanks for having me.
Great. I look forward to hearing from you, Paul. Fiona O'Toole.
I work with the Community Foundation, and I'm also a volunteer with My Ray's organisation, my local area. I'm very passionate about mental health and the Community Foundation supporting mental health projects.
Brilliant, Fiona, thank you. And I hope I've got this pronunciation right. Lekan, is that right?
Yes, not too bad, Fiona. My name is Lekan Ojo-Kiji-Abasi, and I'm the current clinical coordinator and founding member of Counseling All Nations Services. We provide therapy to support people that are going through mental health and emotional well-being difficulties. And within my team, I have 9 bilingual counselors. And we started client work in 2014, became a charity in 2013 with HMRC and Charity Commission for Northern Ireland. That's me. Thank you.
That's brilliant, Lekan. Thank you. And Nikki?
I'm Nikki Bell. I work for the Community Foundation in the grants team as a Salesforce administrator, so processing all the grants.
Hello, Nikki.
Really important job. And Kieran McCallion?
Yeah, good morning, everybody. So Kieran McCallion's my name. I'm the head of human resources with Almond Overy in Belfast. So we're a law firm. We've got 600 people who work for us, and obviously none of us are in our office at the moment, so we've been working this way like everybody else since March. As an organization globally and then locally, particularly locally, we attach a huge importance to our people's well-being and mental health across we were constantly looking for ideas and looking for better ways to do things and wanting to learn from others. We've worked quite a lot with David, who's on the call from Aware. He supported us in a huge way with dealing with one of our large business units, the LSC. Yeah, just looking forward to hearing everybody's stories and seeing what we can take away.
Great, great, Kieran. It'll be really interesting to hear the perspective from industry and from business as well. So thank you for coming with us. David, since you're from Aware.
Yes, David, and David Julie from Aware. I'm one of the education and training officers. So basically, with Aware, I kind of focus very much on, say, organising training, going out and delivering workshops, and basically sort of spreading awareness of what mental health is and how to look after it. In terms of kind of Aware, we also have kind of support groups. So I think kind of before COVID kind of kicked off, we had around 26 that would meet in person, and I obviously, because of COVID, that's kind of changed, and we're having kind of sort of to do a mix of kind of online as well as group work. So as well as kind of sort of the community stuff as well, we also do some work as well, kind of with businesses as well, just as Kieran has mentioned. And yeah, so I'm looking forward to being part of the conversation, just listening to what people say. Very looking forward to it.
Thanks, David. And Leslie?
Hi, Shafra. Hello, everybody. I'm a grants and donor care officer at the Community Foundation. So we would get advice to different groups that would phone through regarding various funds. So quite a lot of them would be on mental health themed projects. I'm probably getting more calls around groups wanting to look at that. As the COVID situation continues, you know, you can see more of that starting to come through. So I'm really looking forward to joining in today and learning about what's happening out there.
Thanks, Leslie. And Ray.
Hi, I'm Ray. I work for a charity in Newcastle called My, and we support people through various challenges within their own life. I'm just tapping what Leslie said. I mentioned the word COVID there. I just thank God for Community Foundation, because throughout COVID they were able to help us dramatically, and I'm excited to see what comes off the back of this today.
Thanks, Ray. And Richard?
Hi, I'm Richard Rogers, and I'm also part of the grants team at the Community Foundation.
Welcome, Richard. Mervyn, how are you?
Good morning. I'm Mervyn McCall. We have a family foundation which the Community Foundation help us run or run for us, I'm not sure which. And although our foundation concentrates on social care, I am interested in learning. So seeing is believing, but it's also learning. So that's why I'm here.
Great, thanks, Mervyn. And Gemma? Morning.
Hello all, I'm Gemma McCockley. I work for the Community Foundation. And my role is Innovation and Voice Programme Officer, and we support many groups and organisations to develop innovative kind of approaches to address issues such as mental health. So I'm interested in this to hear your stories and also connect with you, and also learn about what groups are doing, you know, firsthand. So
great. Thanks, Gemma. And Gavin, I can see you now, Gavin. How are you?
Morning, everyone. I'm Gavin Nelson. I'm Club and Community Development Officer at the Irish Football Association. So as part of my role, I would lead on Ahead of the Game, which is our mental health awareness programme for football clubs across Northern Ireland. So we would have some tutors that would go out and normally deliver pre-COVID groups face-to-face, and probably the same challenges as everyone else, where we've had to adapt and try and develop and be agile, moving online and sort of seeing how we can adapt. So just interested in hearing from everybody today.
Great, Gavin, thank you. And David, good morning.
Hi, my name is David McCurley. I'm a trustee with the Community Foundation and also chair of the Finance and Resource Committee. And I think these seeing as believing opportunities are a fantastic way to sort of hear a bit more about the reality of what the Community Foundation is dealing with, and sort of hear the other side of things. So keen to hear the stories today.
Thanks, David. And Paul, good morning.
Hi everyone, Paul Braithwaite. I also work for the Community Foundation in the same team as Gemma, so working on the Innovation and Voice programmes.
Great. And Julie?
Hi, my name's Julie Sherlock. I am lucky enough to work with the Community Foundation to support their comms and PR function, with Shifra and Kirsty mainly, but the rest of the team too. Here to learn. Certainly what I'm finding is that speaking to grantees, whether indirectly or directly, the work the Community Foundation does supports mental health across the board. So, you know, even if it's a program of supporting food parcels during the start of the coronavirus pandemic, that's supporting mental health right through to specific programs. So I'm really, really excited to be here this morning, if that's the right word. Thank you.
Thanks, Julie. Morning, Maeve. How are you?
Yeah, good morning, Shifra. Hi, everybody. I'm Maeve Monaghan. I'm chair of the Community Foundation, and I'm really, really glad to be here. First of all, to meet all the new faces in the foundation. So anybody who's new and I haven't met, it's lovely to meet you. And I suppose, as David had mentioned, we're just really, really keen as trustees to be looking at this area and looking at what the foundation does. We're in the next phase of looking at our strategy moving forward and reviewing it. So this gives us a really good seeing as believing. This gives us an idea of what's going on and what we need to be focusing on. But in my day job, I'm also the chief executive of Now Group that supports people with learning difficulties and autism, and obviously mental health and good mental health is a big focus for us with our staff and our participants as well. So I'll be glad to hear from everybody who's going to be talking today. So nice to meet you all.
Thanks, Maeve. And Michael Hughes, how are you?
Shifra, my name is Michael Hughes, and I'm the Building Sustainable Communities officer or manager for the Community Foundation. My interest is, as part of my work, I manage the Comric Relief Programme, and we've been very fortunate under Comric Relief to being able to support a number of groups in their work around mental health. And just after Christmas time, we actually developed a dedicated programme addressing some of the rising suicides in Northern Ireland. Brought together a number of groups to develop individual programs where it was really about developing the capacity of families to help people who have suicidal tendencies, so that they could take some responsibility for that person at a time of need. That work is currently ongoing. Obviously, they were awarded the contracts, I think it was just the first week in March, and we know what happened after that. So a bit of a lockdown, but that work is still ongoing.
Great, thanks, Michael. Benny, welcome. How are you?
I'm good, Shifra. Can you? Yeah, sorry. Sorry, I was a wee bit late. A few technical problems.
No, can hear you and see you. So welcome.
So my name is Benny Muskelly. I'm the purpose officer for PwC, and mental health and suicide prevention are what we're tackling as a firm. So we've made a 10-year commitment, 5 to 10-year commitment, and we've recently launched a payroll giving scheme, which the foundation are managing on our behalf. So we've got ambitious targets, I think, for the next while, but I believe that we can do that and make a difference to the sort of the lives of those who are the most vulnerable. Currently, we're working primarily with homeless people. So supporting about 25 people who have been either currently homeless or have been homeless, and trying to transform and save their lives, basically.
That's great, Benny. Thanks for being with us. And Mary Catherine, how are you? She's on mute.
Hi, I'm Mary Catherine. I'm the finance officer for the Community Foundation, and I'm really looking forward to finding out more about the mental health and hearing from the speakers today, because we know it's a big issue at the minute. So.
Thanks, Mary Catherine. And last but not least, Siobhan. Siobhan is our interim mental health champion. Welcome, Siobhan.
Hello, everybody. I'm an interim mental health champion, and I'll tell you a wee bit more about what that means. And thanks, and it's lovely to see everybody. I hope you're all okay this morning. Hasn't been an easy week with all the changes. So yeah, we'll chat later. Thanks.
Great, thanks. So that's, hopefully I've covered everybody. Kirsty, hi, I know you're with us as well. I didn't actually get to you, but I think you met everybody beforehand. So just in terms of putting this into just a little bit of context, we all know, you know, mental health is a massive issue in worldwide and particularly in Northern Ireland. So far this year, the stats are telling us we've had 102 suicides in the first 6 months of the year. We know that 1 in 10 children have a diagnosable mental health illness. And we know that the number of people on antidepressants in Northern Ireland is very high. And all of this is pre-COVID, which has actually just exacerbated the issue. Is what we're hearing in the news every day, and we know that there's a lot of stress and anxiety around redundancies, job securities, risks of further lockdowns and isolation. And in the foundation, we're seeing this in the applications that we're getting from some of you as groups, but also just generally what we hear every day. We've given out about £1 million in the last year to mental health issues, and that's nowhere near enough. We know that. But I was talking to Siobhan just last week in preparation for this, and we thought it would be really interesting to focus on what we can do. They're all pretty negative stats and okay, they're factual, but what can we do about this situation? And it's great that Siobhan's with us, and maybe she can take some of this information back to the policymakers as well. But I'm going to open up the conversation initially maybe by just talking to Paul. I thought maybe if we just go and hear from the perspective of an individual who has maybe, Paul, you can tell us your story yourself, but also if you could tell us what you think we can do, either as charities or as funders or as people who are can influence policy down the line. So over to you for a few minutes, Paul.
Okay, guys. I suppose 648 days ago, I didn't think I'd be sitting at a panel and telling them my story about where I've been and where I am now. It would take me about 3 or 4 hours to tell you the whole story, but I'll try and break it down as quick as possible and get to the points that need addressed. I suppose started taking drugs for about 20 years, and that includes alcohol, because I think alcohol needs to be put into that drug bracket. Even though it's legal, it's still a drug, and it's a mind, mood altering chemical. It all started out a bit of fun, where it took me to where I wanted to take my own life. Don't get me wrong, at the start it was all fun and games and enjoyed it. Then it became part of my life. It became the solution of my life with all my problems. I couldn't deal with pain, I couldn't deal with feelings. So the easy way out was to take drugs. My choice of drug was cocaine, started off as ecstasy. I couldn't deal with my own trauma. I had a bit of trauma when I was growing up. I came from a very loving, caring family, but a lot of trauma through school, bullying, beat up all the time. A few other issues that I don't really like to talk about sometimes, where my head told me that I was no good. I tried to be part of groups, friends, but I didn't fit in. So the way I done it was to be Jack the Lad and either get out of myself on drink or out of myself on drugs to fit in. So that's a massive thing that I think needs to be dealt with, is the trauma side, why people take drugs. But then it materialized of being taking drugs with groups to doing it all on my own, in total isolation. The only friends I had was drug dealers. I caused so much pain and misery to my family, mum, dad, my wife, my kids, and my friends. I pushed them all away, because even though they were trying to help me and telling me to stop doing it, I just continued on to take drugs, because there was no way no one was going to tell me what to do. I thought I was right and I knew all the answers, but slowly but surely it was taking me down a path where I wanted to take my life, because every corner I turned, there was a problem and I couldn't deal with it, or there was a massive issue with either police or my wife or my mum and dad. And, anytime there was some bad news that came into the house or to me, the way around it was to get out of myself, which was to take drugs. And that meant that the more I took, the more I was going into sort of like depression and anxiety and paranoia. I had all them things in my head. I was a DJ. Yes, I could put this mask on and DJ at weddings. no problem. But when I went to see one of my people that love me, my family, I was just a really angry man and didn't want to be part of them. So, like I said, the only way out was to take more drugs. And the day that I just had enough, that I says, you know, I think it's best thing is that I take my own life here. I remember going up to my attic and my skis, my wife's skis, my kids' skis were sitting there. And I chickened out because I seen them. I just cried my eyes. But my solution to that was I go and get more cocaine and to get out of myself. Now that was in December 2018, where I was on my last legs, where I just thought that, you know, there's no more. Paul's just better off away out of the road. Let everyone else get on with their own lives. He's gone. That's what my head was telling me. There was just so much going on in my life. I was out of work. I actually told work that I couldn't work anymore because of depression and anxiety, and the doctors were putting me off work. And that was me happy, because all I done every day was use drugs to get through my life. I lost a considerable amount of weight. I went down to 10 stone. I did try.
How did you get out of that situation? I mean, what?
Yeah, I was just about to go on to that.
Yeah.
Well, it was around New Year's Eve. Like every addict, they always say, if you have a hangover, I'm giving it up tomorrow, or I'm giving it up at the weekend, or the start of the month. It's always the next day. It's never there and then. And come the weekend, when you start feeling good again, you were back at it. Or in my case, it was every day, so I didn't stop. But it was a Christmas 2018, New Year's Day. I came home from work on New Year's Eve night, and I went off on one in the house. And my wife, she rang my brother. She says, I'm gone. You need to help him. He needs help, because she was sick of trying. There was so much help. I see Ray there. Like, Ray was just down the road from me. I grew up with Ray, so he knows a lot about me. So basically, my dad was dying of cancer, which, you know, I was being so selfish. You know, my family was going through enough. They took me to Downpatrick to talk to one of the doctors down there, and they said, we are reluctant to put you into a mental institution because you haven't got depression. The depression was coming from the cocaine, and obviously any drug, you know, they all have the same pass, and they put me in because I told them I was suicidal. And what they done was put me into Ward 12 in Lisburn, and I found that my life in there was a big change. I rang my when I was in there to see could they help me, and they put me on a path with another addict, and I spent 13-14 days in there, and the changes in that were phenomenal. I started getting routine again. Up in the morning, showered. I ate 3 meals a day, where before I was living on Red Bull and Topic bars, and that's all I lived on. And you started to see a wee bit of weight coming on. My appearance, I was just grey and horrible looking. I didn't take any pride in myself. So when I got in, they told me, like, you haven't got chronic depression, you've got a cocaine problem. But obviously the drugs were making me this person that I didn't want to be. I was just not myself, basically. And I had tried numerous years before to try and go off drugs, but I just hadn't got the tools. And when I did,
can I stop you for a second, Paul, because I want to bring in some of the community groups and the charities maybe that are coming across people. You know, it's an awful experience what you've been through. It's horrific, and I'm sure there are probably others like you. And I'm just wondering what supports the charities are actually able to provide. So I was maybe going to ask. I know we've got My on the call. We've got Aware on the call. David, if I come to you first, are you seeing, you know, a lot of people like Paul or with similar situations, and they don't know where to go, or how do you refer them, or is there a problem with the system, like he's highlighting through his story?
I think definitely. Thanks very much, Paul, for sharing that. That's definitely something that's so very personal and something that's very raw. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that that I have kind of found in my experience before I was with Aware, I was with Action Mental Health for a couple of years, which is another mental health charity, and it didn't sort of matter where we went to do our talks or where we kind of spoke at. It didn't matter what kind of age group we were talking to. There would always be people at the end who would kind of come up and would kind of talk about the different things that they were going through. Also on the side of that, you know, a lot of sort of my time was spent kind of referring people on to kind of different things. So I suppose, you know, when we're kind of approached by people, what we kind of do is we kind of try to sort of do a basic assessment of where they're at, you know, what's their needs at that time, how severe are things, and depending upon that, we would kind of respond. You know, whether it would be maybe Samaritans or Lifeline, but we would always kind of stress, you know, going to sort of the GP and stuff like that. And then we would kind of advertise our own services, sort of support groups and so on and so on. But one of the things that we do come up against very often is people who kind of talk about how their experience with the system has been very difficult and has been very kind of taxing and costly. So I think the way I see it is, I think we all kind of know the statistics around kind of mental health in Northern Ireland, and we all know that there's a lot needs done. So my kind of viewpoint on it is that you know, I think we suppose as a society need to realize that there's some severe problems with the system, and obviously how things are working at the moment.
I'm just wondering if Ray from MyMy wants to add anything there, like from MyMy's perspective. Are you know, what are you seeing? What are your challenges?
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Paul. Hearing Paul speak is, you know, a similar journey I've been on personally myself. I think we need to, and you know, like his scenario, he just needed to be met with some empathy and compassion at the time. I can remember that conversation we had when you're in the ward. And we need to sort of, I think the breakdown is how we even look at mental health. It's definitely dramatically changed over the last few years. Like we started the charity 10 or so years ago, these conversations weren't being had, you know, so there has been massive advancements made. But even how we even frame, you know, when Paul, his method of abuse was cocaine, we have to understand that the key to this isn't to look at this, whatever his method of abuse is, but why that abuse in the first place, you know, what is the underlying issues. Whereas, you know, we tend to look down our nose at, you know, the difference between somebody who takes drugs every day and somebody that takes alcohol every day, when in actual fact, hands down, alcohol removes more lives in Northern Ireland. There's no comparison. But we tend to say one's worse than the other when the questions need to be had. What is the underlying issue here? Why the drugs in the first place? You know, take the focus away from the drug dealers and ask ourselves why the demand in the first place. And I think if we can understand the answers to those questions, then long term we can start to reduce the outcomes. Whereas the likes of Paul ended up where he had to be locked away, if you like, for a few weeks. If we can understand the answers to those questions, why the drugs in the first place, we can start to make a real difference, you know, why the mental ill health challenges in the first place, and to take a longer look at this and trying to look at things that, you know, as a root cause preventable approach, rather than, you know, what we do in our charity and have done for a long time is we feel that it's some great work, but it's a lot of firefighting. Where if we can take a longer look at this root cause preventable measure instead of managing, I think that could really turn the tide on what we see today.
Thank you. I mean, just it's interesting because back in January, Michael mentioned the programme he works on, the Comic Relief Fund. We did bring a number of charities together just to discuss this issue. And two things that we heard quite clearly were that there are a lot of people being signposted, you know, but there's actually a need for direct action. And then also that families are really struggling with the tough decisions of what to do with a family member, or how to cope if you have a family member who has suicidal tendencies. And I just wonder, I was going to bring in maybe Siobhan O'Neill, just if you have any sort of reflections on that, or what's been said so far, what you're hearing. Thanks, Siobhan.
Oh yeah, no, it's the presentations have been brilliant, and thanks Paul and Ray particularly. You're absolutely right. Alcohol and other drugs have been a huge focus of my work now, and I'm taking that as a theme because it's certainly responsible. Alcohol is responsible for many more deaths and suicide, and we're now finding that our suicide rates were a bit lower than we thought, and the numbers down from drug problems are the same as that as suicide. And at the end of the day, people are taking substances because they need to be able to manage their emotional health for self-regulation purposes because of the traumas that they've been through. So the social factors, the structural inequalities that exist are the things that need to be removed. But mental health services aren't able to help people who have taken drugs right now. The siloed approach where addiction services and mental health services are essentially separate, and people who are using drugs want mental health services and they can't get those services. And addiction services aren't equipped for them, and that's the big problem. And unfortunately, the only way of addressing this is a strategic approach. So there's a mental health strategy being designed right now, and I'm involved in that. It's a 10-year strategy, and it needs to be 10 years because we have to train people, we have to make sure the structures are in place. But I think it will also need funding as well. So even if we wanted to provide services, dual diagnosis services right now, we don't have enough trained people in Northern Ireland to provide those services. That's the reality of it. And difficulty with the current pandemic that we're all going through now is that there's mental health workers that are needed in other areas of the health service to deal with the risk of COVID, to help with people there. So it's a really, really difficult time right now. But you know, things should get better once we have the strategy. Then we ask for funding for that, and if the ministers won't give us funding for that, we will vote them out. And that's what I would be saying. You vote for people who will fund the thing that we want. You know, this is within our power. There is money. It's all about where the money's directed. And the executive are the people responsible for that. So, we need to be encouraging people to participate in democracy. That's how we'll get adequate mental health services. We've seen how we were able to bail out the banks. We've seen how we were able to furlough people and essentially pay wages for people. We can pay for a mental health service. It's going to have to come out of somewhere else. But, these are tough decisions, but ministers need to take them, and we need to be voting for people who are going to take those decisions. So hopefully that's helpful.
Very helpful. Thank you. Benny, I just was going to ask you, I mean, as an organisation that is supporting mental health as a funder, how do you decide, where to start with this? Obviously we're listening today to what it's like out there for people, but how do you decide where your funding will go?
So we held a competition.
Okay.
We held a competition which Siobhan actually picked the winning consortium. She was on an independent panel 2 years ago, because it's such a massive problem that we didn't know where to start. We're not trained, so we decided that we would pick homelessness, run a pilot program in Flaxfoyer in the Ardoyne to see if we could change the lives of some young people. And what Paul said really resonated with me, because there's drug and alcohol abuse, but it comes down to the why. So they're all dealing with massive childhood trauma, and the drug and alcohol addiction is their coping mechanism to get them through the day. So until you start to deal with the issue, with the individual, and that's why it has to be like a 10-year program, because it has to be a tailored approach for an individual.
Yes.
Because everyone's different. the sort of everyone's journey has been different.
Mhm.
And the timeline, so you can't, at the start we sort of went in with a sort of 4-week program that you could just run, and you know, PwC would fix mental health. And then we discovered very quickly how naive that we were and how challenging this was going to be, and that's why we're sticking with it. And we want to expand the program. We want to invite more corporates in, because it is an edgy thing. You know, people are used to holding up the check, you know, the charity check at the end of the year, and you know, aren't we really good? But it's such an important issue that you sort of have to go into the trenches, as it were, get your hands dirty, roll up your sleeves, because you are dealing with, you know, ultimately someone's life.
Yeah, and it's actually, I mean, the point that you raise about, you know, involving others, certainly in the sort of funding environment, we are finding funders starting to work together more. A lot of that has been driven by COVID and the need to react quickly, but it's been quite a positive response, and hopefully you're seeing that in the community as well. But I wanted to come to hopefully I've pronounced this right again, Lican, is that right? Lican. Just when your work with Counselling All Nations, I mean, Benny has talked there about how charities get chosen, you know, for funding. How do the people you're working with reach the services? I mean, how difficult is that? Can you tell us a little bit about your work?
Thank you, Sifra, and thank you everybody for giving me the opportunity. My name is pronounced correctly by Sifra. I appreciate that. I was typing there away while you were talking, and I just hit the button and send. Anyway, if we are able to allow Paul to tell his story fully, I think it will shape, you know, your work supporting charities asking or seeking for support. It will help you to have a clear understanding of what is happening. I think somebody made mention that, oh, Paul's problem might have started from school. Yes, that could be true, but from home, from community, and we can't really say 100% it started from one place. Everybody go through different phases of mental health and emotional difficulties. In CANS, we set up CANS as a result of lack of specific culturally sensitive service to support people from Black, Asian, and minority ethnic communities. And as we all know, we have quite few people from minority communities that English is not their first language. Where English is difficult for them to understand or to even communicate with professionals. If somebody goes to their GP and they're talking about their emotional difficulties, they might not make that clear to the GP to either prescribe appropriate medication if we want to go down the, you know, medicalizing of helping people with their emotional needs, or if it is to do with talking therapies. It's only recently, in 2015, that the Belfast Trust, after a pilot project in West Belfast, and I happen to work in West Belfast at the time, I'm still there anyway, so that then they encourage GP to prescribe social prescribing, including talking therapies. And people who have been, you know, hooked on medication for long, it will come to a time that it's not going to work anymore. And like Paul's story, you wish combination of drug, combination of alcohol to numb your feelings instead of having an appropriate place to go and address those feelings. Yes, we all will have had what we call adverse childhood experience. Everybody, even mothers who had a baby had a trauma. So everybody will have all this, but how we have that resilience to cope with them, or how we manage to address them, to resolve those issues, other stuff. So from my group, that apart from language difficulty, the Belfast Trust contract we had is only up to 8 before when we started. Now they've shut it down to 6. and you are going to see your counselor just for 6 weeks to address all these issues. I don't know how that is going to work. But in our field, we think half bread is better than nothing, just the old cliche. So that is why we run with it. And that is why we are running to Community Foundation. And thank you. Michael, I just said thank you to funding us recently to allow us again to be able to work with people outside of Greater Belfast area, because our work has always been within the Greater Belfast for the past few years we have been in operation. So if you have to talk about my experience as a practitioner, my experience as managing the project, I need more time. So
that's okay. Well, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be able to support you, Can, and you're doing some fantastic work.
Thank you.
So thank you. Maeve, do you mind if I ask you a question in relation to the Now Group rather than the Community Foundation, which is what we normally speak about? But we are, I suppose, seeing in the foundation, a lot of need around families and groups that are supporting people with learning difficulties, which is what you do every day. But how have they coped, even through COVID, and are you seeing an increase in anxiety or need around the work that you're doing with those families?
Yeah, I would say, if I'm being honest, at the very beginning of lockdown, for instance, particularly for the participants that we're supporting with quite significant disabilities, I think things went okay for the first while, because people were at home and they were safe, and an organisation like ours and a lot of other good organisations moved online, did a lot of engagement programmes, and that was a new thing and it felt quite good. And actually the feedback initially was quite good, that people felt engaged. But as that went on longer, I think it's reflective of everybody in the population that people couldn't sustain it. And the individuals, our participants, were struggling with that. But their parents and carers were really, really struggling, particularly if there's other conditions in the home as well, and people's mental health and stress. And then the worry of, well, we need to do something, but what will we do and what will be the impact? And is that safe for people to go in that whole conversation? And I think, one of the biggest things, managing the media and the messages and what's happening, people are very confused. The people we're supporting are very vulnerable medically as well as emotionally. So there's that challenge, and we're sitting now with 95% of our participants back on a phased return and in safe conditions, and worrying about what might happen next and whether, how people will cope. And people who really need routines have not coped, and we've had to bring them back quicker, and others have been at home safe enough, well, but their mental health longer term has been an issue. We're struggling as well, as I am personally, with significant weight gain for people when they've been off, when they maybe had problems with that already, and what the longer term thing of that is. So it's really hard to know. I don't think the population we support is probably just a bit more exaggerated than the general population. Would be the same. The area I would have a concern about, we have quite a few parents with learning difficulties and autism. Big concern for us when the full lockdown happened and the schools were off, and we had parents who struggle on their own to look after their kids, and everybody in the house for a long period of time with no intervention. That would have been a big worry for us, but with the right intervention that worked. But I think just exactly how the rest of us are feeling, but maybe a bit more exacerbated, Shifra.
Yeah, thank you. There's a couple of comments coming through the chat, but before I go to them, I haven't given my own colleagues the opportunity to ask questions yet. Put your hand up, guys, if anybody wants to ask anything. Paul, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Shifra, and thanks to everybody for the contribution so far, especially to Paul. That was a hard thing to do, to tell you a story like that in front of a group of people, but that was really helpful, so thank you for that. I just wanted to see what people thought about, Siobhan, you really helpfully pinpointed the political dimension of this, and that, really at that structural level, unless we see a sea change in terms of the priority given to mental health by government, we're going to be still having this conversation in 10 years' time. So good to hear the mental health strategies going forward. We hear a lot of rhetoric about mental health, but I haven't noticed. I mean, my wife is just a recently qualified counsellor, so I hear a little bit of this from the inside, but there doesn't seem to be much of a change on the ground in terms of, you know, we talk about parity between physical and mental health, but that seems to be a nonsense to me in terms of the reality. What we do see though is loads of community groups and organisations and charities like those represented here today stepping up to the plate and doing lots of fantastic work trying to meet the need. And then you've got independent philanthropy alongside that. So I'm just wondering, from the standpoint of an independent charitable foundation like us, what do any of the people on the call who kind of, well, anyone really think about how we can best make that connection? So we've got on the one hand, services being scaled up and so on the funding side of things. How do we get from there to that strategic shift that you're talking about? What can independent organizations like the Community Foundation best do to help that shift to happen? Anyone?
Siobhan, if you want to take that? Yep.
Yeah, well, from my perspective, there's a co-design process happening. My role is to include as many people on the ground. So some groups have been talking to me about their issues, but I'm trying to hear from people with experience and carers. But when this mental health strategy goes out to consultation, I think it's really important that community groups are thinking about their response to that right now and prepare responses to that. And then it's the role for me and other people who are looking at the responses of the consultation to make sure that the strategy is adequate and that it addresses the issues that you bring up. I think we need to mobilise the community and voluntary sector more and have a united voice there and make sure that the mental health strategy going forward has a place for the community and voluntary sector. I feel that a lot of the time the community and voluntary sector are picking up the pieces, they're filling in the gaps. And they have to respond really quickly to funding calls. They have to change what they do to whatever calls come out. They're not really being able to shape or lead this process, and yet they have the community intelligence that we need as well. So I think we need something like that together for You Network, and even more than that, to bring that intelligence from the community and voluntary sector to the table in a coherent and strategic way so that it can actually influence the strategy and the components of the strategy, so that there's a place and there's funding and sustainable funding for the organisations going forward. At the minute, I'm just in despair. The number of groups who are looking to donations to try and keep going, and yet the work that they do is literally keeping people alive because the statutory sector can't respond. It's really, really frustrating. So that would be my advice, and that's what I'm trying to support, I guess, in the next few months.
David, I think you want to come in. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to kind of echo what Siobhan said. That sounds fantastic, Siobhan, because definitely something that kind of we have kind of found from Aware is, you know, when people are maybe coming to us and we maybe can't sort of help them out, one of the things that we will do, we will kind of signpost them elsewhere. And one of the things that's a constant surprise is when you look at the Z card directories for the PHA, is, you know, they're covered front and back of all these, you know, various charities, some of them quite small, some of them in between. But one of the big thing that Siobhan has kind of hit on is, you know, we're all trying to keep afloat. We're all trying to kind of sort of work with our funding, and there's a lot of time that's put towards, you know, trying to ensure that. For me, the kind of biggest thing is, you know, is just the charity and the voluntary sector, especially in those that are helping people with mental health, really kind of work a wee bit better together, more so in just highlighting the services that are available. But of course, as we mentioned, you know, that's simply because that's maybe not there because everybody's just trying to maybe stay afloat. We at Aware, we've been, you know, we're so thankful to all of our funders. Allen and Overy have funded us for young people's workshops, and that has been sort of invaluable to help us out as well. So I just think, you know, Siobhan's point is kind of spot on, because there's a lot of stuff out there. It just needs to be sort of put together and put forward.
And Kieran, can I bring you in, because as somebody who works in the private sector, you know, how are Allen and Overy actually dealing with this, even with your own employees, you know, because we can't kind of silo off people just because they're in a work environment. And Paul actually made the point that, you know, he was made redundant. That didn't help his situation either. But can you tell us a little bit about what's happening in the private sector around?
Yeah, for sure. So I think Paul, your story, you know, really hit home. And I think one thing it says to me is that you never know what's going on in the background and what's going on behind closed doors for any individual. So as a law firm, on the face of it, we would be, perceived as an organization where you've got, 600 plus highly performing, highly effective individuals who come to work every day and they perform at the top of their game. Okay, so that's the facade. But what is happening behind that and behind closed doors when somebody goes home at night, or what are the stressors that somebody has in their life, whether they be work related, whether they be substance abuse, whether they be relationship related, or whatever, what's driving these stressors. And I think what we want to do as an organization is to make sure that we are being, as much as possible, assisting people and signposting people to the experts. And David, I would regard, David is as an expert and as someone who we would turn to for advice and help. But it starts at home or within the four walls of our organization, where we have a number of different programs and approaches which help us with this. It starts with our line manager population, and we want to make sure that they are as much as possible equipped to deal with and signpost their people to the correct resources and help. So we have a program called Mindful Manager, which I know is quite common, and we're rolling that out to all of our managers. We've got a network of mental health first aiders who are trained in mental health first aid. We've got 30 of those across the organization. We then have a network of mental health allies, who are another layer of people who can be vigilant and are known to our workforce as somebody to turn to whenever there is any crisis or any issue that somebody wants to talk about. So that works very well for us. And I think what's really important for us as well is to go beyond the tokenistic. So it has to have depth, it has to have credibility and authenticity. And that's brought through having people tell stories such as Paul has done, and people feel that they can talk about their challenges in the workplace. The other resources that we've got are, we've got our employee assistance program, and we have obviously talked to Aware and to Action Mental Health as well, for specific assistance, and also to assist us with the programs that we've run as well. So that's our approach. It's basically, you could say that we do this because we want to be a successful law firm. We want to earn lots of money for our partners and so on and so forth. But fundamentally, it's down to we've got 600 people who show up for us every day at work, either in the office or virtually, and we want to make sure that we're making that as easy as possible a thing for them. I think, and then since we've been in lockdown, this has come even more to the front. We've really had to kind of mobilize all of those tools that we put in place. And I'm very grateful that we've had them already, because that we've had to use every tool in our toolbox over the last 6 months, and will do going forward to support people. So it starts with us. I'm looking at this from how do we support our workforce and do good at a societal level rather than on a fundraising level at this point. But that's obviously something we do too.
No, and thank you for that, because I think, again, just in conversation with Siobhan last week, you could add to this, Siobhan, but just that we often forget about ourselves in this. And I mean, there is a lot of work. We're hearing it this morning going on in the background, and charities and community groups are doing some fantastic work, but we often wonder, do we look after ourselves in this as well? And I don't know if you want to come in, Siobhan, on that point.
Completely. I've been given a lot of presentations recently about the effect of stress and trauma on the body, and they put our brain into the fight or flight response, which means we are geared up for aggression, challenge, rapid action, not for careful, focused reflection, problem solving. And it's the reflection and problem solving that we need in order to get through a pandemic, in order to work out the mental health strategy. So we need to be in that safe and social, calm place before we can make decisions. We will make the wrong decisions. We will we will stockpile toilet roll, in fact, rather than doing the things that matter. So self-care is first, absolutely must come first. And then we'll be able to problem solve, and we will do the best for the people that we look after. And it doesn't matter who you are, that applies to you, whether you're a solicitor or a bank manager deciding whether you're going to loan somebody money, or whether you're working in a community group trying to problem solve with somebody on the ground regarding their debt or their job loss. You need to look after yourself so that you're able to look after that person. They will pick up cues from you about when they need to be fearful and scared if you're in a place of stress. So I cannot emphasize that you should not be working. If that's how you are, you need to get yourself back to safe and social. And it's something I have to tell myself and remind myself every single day as a leader too, that I can't react. I need to reflect and respond. And the body and brain, when we're under pressure, we just can't do that. It's because, and self-compassion is part of that as well. We are, at the end of the day, we have an animal brain, and it's working for us, but we need to know how it works and use that and look after ourselves. And that's my one big message to all of you. You're doing amazing work. And in order for you to keep doing that, you need to look after yourselves.
Thank you, Siobhan. Caroline, Caroline and the other Siobhan on the call. We haven't heard from you. I'm just wondering if you would like to give any reflections or anything to say.
So I'm actually typing away an email to Siobhan here, whatever you're talking, because she put in her email address to things. So I put into the group that Paul, first of all, when I listened to his story, it was so brave of you to share it. I know everyone's saying that, but actually, it's overwhelming to hear someone's first-hand experience. But as a mummy, I'm thinking selfishly when I'm listening to Paul about my kids in school and about how that transpired to Paul in later life, the way his behaviours all came from what happened at school. So I, as a mum and also someone very involved in the community, am so keen that there would be some kind of facility in schools to tackle these type of issues, so we're not dealing with it in later life. So there is a local school that have a nurture unit, and I've been speaking to the principal there, but it isn't in every school. The funding isn't available, but I want there to be a nurture unit in every school in Northern Ireland so that we can try to help the kids before it progresses into this. So I don't know if it's unrealistic, if it's part of the plan and the strategy in the Mental Health Act, if it's even something that can be achieved, but I believe that that's me that doesn't really know much about mental health at all. That's where it needs to start. So I'm keen to kind of try and figure something out in that way.
Excellent, thank you. Siobhan, I don't know, do you want to say anything?
Sorry, what me? Yes, the Orla one or the other one? I'm very much involved in mental health and using drama as a tool to deal with mental health. As I said, we had an event on Saturday called Breaking the Silence, where we use short stories and poetry to help people. And as a drama group, we have a program in place that we're going to go out to the public, socially distance, of course, to use drama as a tool to help people creatively and try and tackle mental health in that way, because drama is a powerful tool. It can give you the confidence. It can, especially on Saturday when we did our our performance, there was poems that touched other people. Drama is a powerful tool, and that's what we're using to go forward, especially during COVID.
Brilliant. I mean, and hopefully, there's been arts funding announced, Siobhan. Hopefully that you'll be able to access some of that to continue some of that work. We have to wrap up in literally, well, a minute ago, but if I just leave it with one further question, I mean, what's the most immediate thing? We've talked about strategy, and we've talked about that absolutely has to be done, but as funders, what is what is the key thing we can do over the next 6 to 12 months that would benefit? And put your hand up if you'd like to answer that. Anybody want to say anything? Ray, go for it.
Yeah, get funding for us, I suppose, is the immediate thing. Yeah, challenges we come up against all the time is obviously core cost funding, whereas it's very hard at times to always be innovative and creative to create a new project that funders are looking at us to fund. This is something you've heard me saying time and time again, and thankfully that you guys have supported us through that, through sitting down early in the year with Michael and a few of yous. That was a great event where we had ourselves, and I think there was 4 other charities there. And the question was, how can we help you? And off the back of that is something that was quite interesting. Maybe Siobhan could, worth noting to her, is that if a person goes through our services in the voluntary and community sector comparison to somebody that goes through the same service through the trust, it's actually 10 times more expensive to go through the trust than it is to ours. So for instance, £350 for 10 counselling sessions on average costs £3,500 in the trust. I think that's something worth really, and you'll find that more often than not that the services within our sector can be accessed quite quickly, whereas the trust could be, much longer. And this isn't me having to go the trust at all, it's just the way it is. And I think also in regards possibly free up money, in Paul McCardle's scenario today, Paul is somebody that no longer uses drugs because he's had the correct support put in place that can help him through challenging times. I think the same thing needs to be looked at even at our prescription medication view, or in 2018 over the previous 5 years, the amount of prescriptions through antidepressants and anti-anxiety tablets have risen by 25%, although the crisis in mental health has continued to get worse. So if we could provide the right services at that early intervention point, I'm not saying not to use medication, but if we can provide the right services at that point, that person may no longer need to be on medication for a year, 2 years, 3 years. In a lot of cases that I've seen, I've sat down with people that have been on antidepressants for 25, 30 years, and the cost of that is huge. So we can support with the medication. I think that could free up a lot of money to go into a sector like ours.
No, thank you. I'm going to have to wrap it up, guys, because we're actually over time. But before I go, I would encourage you to save the chat if you can, and you'll see, because there's offers from Paul there to share his story to you on any occasions. There's a call from Siobhan O'Neill to feed into the consultation and to get in touch with her directly if you'd like to. But on behalf of the Community Foundation and my colleagues and trustees on the call, thank you very much for joining us this morning. It's been really, really helpful. And I know we will use this information for, as Maeve said, our own strategy going forward. And we'll write up the notes of this and maybe put it out in a blog, so you get a feel for some of the or others that couldn't join us will get a feel for what's been said. But thank you very, very much, everybody, and have a great week. Okay, thanks a million. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, Kirsty.
Bye.
Thanks, Shifa. Bye-bye.
Thanks very much, guys. Take care.